A distressing new number out of the CDC tonight, estimating 107,000 U.S. deaths from overdose in 2021. With lethal drugs still killing Americans at an alarming rate, now progressives in Washington state are pushing to legalize more drugs. Possession. Well, let's talk about what's called Initiative 1922 in the Evergreen State as we begin tonight's lightning round with KTTH Seattle talk radio host Jason Rantz. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
This is your headline. Progressives push drug legalization lie amidst fatal OD surge and past failures. What's the deal?
Yeah, so Initiative 1922 effectively legalizes drugs. It takes away all legal penalties
like all
associated
kinds of drugs?
with fentanyl.
Marijuana? What are we talking about?
All drugs whatsoever. Every single kind of drug. So we're talking about fentanyl, heroin, meth, whatever you think would be legal for personal possession. Now, the reason why I'm calling this out as a lie is because they're basing this on the so-called success of Oregon, which had a slightly less extreme version of this initiative that basically did the same thing, except you can still get civil infractions if you were to be found possessing these drugs. Now, with the citations, you're supposed to get this phone number that you call in order to get help if you want to get out of the citation. They gave 2,000 out over the course of the year, and only 19 of the people actually called the number to get treatment resources. On top of that, of the 16,000 addicts who did try to get resources, only less than a percentage, it's 0.85%, actually went into drug rehab. And the whole pitch behind this is that we're getting people out of prisons and putting them into treatment where all of us, I think, would prefer them to go. The problem is they're not actually going into rehab. And in Oregon, the way they're calling it a success now is saying, well, actually, we're redefining success. We're now talking about getting people basically clean needles to use. And that's what they're spending a lot of the money on services. So we're not actually getting people off of drugs. We're continuing to keep them hooked onto them.
Yikes. And I don't think that is what most of those addicts want either. Okay, your next headline. School used unsubstantiated hate speech claim to push kids into equity training. You say this is happening outside of Seattle. What's the deal?
Yeah, so it's happening at Kirkland Middle School, where the staff there, the principal there, made the claim that there is a huge surge of hate speech happening on campus. And so they decided to put these kids into equity training on why you shouldn't call anyone different names. And on the surface, you wouldn't think there's anything controversial, except when you take a look at the actual equity plan, it tells you about how actually hate is a lack of awareness over one's privilege. When you talk about criminal justice disparities and cultural appropriation, unequal media representation and jokes, these are things that they would consider to be either hateful, hate speech, or bias incidents. Now, when I reached out to the school to say, okay, you say that there is a large number, what exactly is that number? How many instances have you actually found of this kind of hate speech? They couldn't give me a single one. In fact, they said, well, you know, some kids might be hearing it and it's hard to track it down. So during this equity training, they actually did a survey to get whether or not these kids have experienced this. And the results showed the opposite of what they claimed. There was only 10% of the students said that they felt targeted because of their religion, 11% because of sexual orientation, and between race and gender it was like 15 to 16%. So the data actually shows that there isn't this huge surge of the hate incidents on campus. It feels like they made this up because they wanted to push kids into what is very clearly partisan equity training.
Okay, quickly before we run out of time, something going on with transit fares, people not paying, and homelessness in train stations. What's the deal?
Okay, really bad. Video taken by a staff member of Sound Transit, which runs our light rail station, found one morning last week about 30 homeless people just completely using the light rail station as a homeless shelter. The problem has gotten so bad over the course of the last 2 years because Sound Transit declared that fare enforcement is racist, and thus they got rid of it. And guess what? Everyone took advantage, no one was paying, and now it's taken over by homeless people.
Seattle. We are happy that you are surviving and thriving there and bringing us these stories that we often find hard to believe, but you fact check them. Jason Rantz, come back again soon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.